Guys, the time has finally come. We have a real way forward to talk about for Major League Soccer right here on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. And potentially more exciting, it's our first outdoor show. We're giving this thing a shot. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it would have been nice to be back in the Heineken MVP club. You know, the doors go up on that. This would have been the perfect time of year for that. But since we can't be there, we're up here on the rooftop tonight, and it feels pretty good.
Yeah, we'll see if there's a Heineken MVP club equivalent potentially, in Orlando here in just a few weeks. But before we dig into that, there's a more important topic we've got to bring up first. We obviously did not have a show last week out of respect for and solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. And you guys, Joshua and Sam in particular, had a great opportunity to take part in the I Can't Breathe painting at Audi Field, which sounds like was an idea that came about from ownership, reaching out to Bill Hamid, Chris Duyachim, some of the other African-American players on the team. What was your experience like?
Yeah, it was really great. I think it was something that was kind of put together pretty quickly, which is great that the team was able to mobilize on that. I think we got the call like 30 minutes beforehand, like day of. They were like, hey, you want to come down and do this? And I know, if this was non-pandemic times, the team would have probably been so welcoming towards the entire community to come and take a part of that. But as it was, trying to meet DC and MLS guidelines, it was a pretty small group there, but it was pretty. There were a lot of different people there, right? We were there. I think individuals from the other supporters groups were there. There were folks from DC Scores there. Like it was a pretty good, diverse subsection of the DC United community.
Yeah, it was nice to see everyone come together for that. It's just a gesture, but it's something that we could all make, and it was encouraging to see most of the front office there. I saw a lot of faces, a lot of people were like, hey, we miss you, thanks for coming out. It was cool. Yeah,
and then Jason Levian came out. He was there also, and he came out and he spoke to the fact that he wanted this to be more than just a gesture, and this was something that the team wanted to move forward with, and this was just the start, but action needs to follow things like that. And I think we've seen a little bit of that with some of the other media that's come out of DC United. I know Bill and Charity from DC Scores and Ben had a really good conversation.
Yeah, and Rodney Wallace was part of that
yes.
as well. Critical conversations midweek this past week. I know I got a chance to watch just the very beginning of it, and then I got dragged back into a work call. But I do know it's still available, and a couple folks that I talked to that did get to take part in it live said it was really good. So I plan to circle back around to it this week. And I got to give a shout out to our friends at Filibuster. Had a great interview with Chris Duyachim this week. Very powerful conversation there as well, sharing his experience growing up not too far outside the DC area, and kind of comparing that to what the hosts of that show went through. And so that was a really good listen as well.
Yeah, I think it's promising. It's really unfortunate that this has gone on for so long, but I think it's good that it's all coming to light. My heart was really heavy for the past couple weeks, but I think if we see, all these organizations moving forward and taking real action, and, if we as fans hold DC United accountable to taking that action too, I think, that's how we start doing our part. But, me, I'm always optimistic. I'm just trying to be optimistic and say that this is all good things coming out of it.
Speaking of good things, there's an airplane flying over right now, which could be an indication that air travel is starting to pick back up again. If you're wondering what the loud noise is going on in the background. Well, one of my questions for you guys, is really cool to see all the pictures, and it's also just a very difficult time in the world to be going through all of the protests as well, just because of the threat of COVID-19 that obviously we've talked way in depth on this show. But what was that like, being in that environment with players who obviously are scrutinized right now, and unfortunately it sounds like one of the DC United players did test positive for COVID-19 just this past week, but what sort of protocols were in place? Obviously folks were wearing masks, but
yeah, masks, and there were gloves, and like you said, as a fan, I just wanted to make sure I didn't have any sort of contact. I knew I wouldn't have gone if I had any sort of symptoms of illness or anything, but yeah, it was in the back of your mind, like, these guys have a job to do, and I mean, everyone in the world does, and that's how we should be treating it. But especially these guys, I didn't want to mess up my team. Like, that would feel terrible.
I mean, luckily, it sounds like the player that tested positive, while they haven't released the name, it wasn't anyone who went to the painting. So, that's pretty good that something negative didn't come out of that. But I also thought it was really cool that the players brought their families, and there were a lot of kids that were also running around and, like, helping to paint. Like, I was painting with Ben Olsen's kids for a little while, and he was talking to them a little bit about what it meant. So it was just cool to kind of see, that I think you wouldn't bring your family to something if you weren't taking it seriously. So it was cool to see them interact with their kids and kind of teach them about, like, why DC United was taking the stance.
It's an interesting, we always talk about how important we view soccer, and I think for all of us, we kind of see how sports often reflect the culture around us, and so to hear about and doing an event like that, and the kind of the new normal as things are starting to reopen in the DMV area and people are starting to go out again, getting a feel for how that's going to look moving forward and how that impacts everything, including showing up to a soccer match or just an event with the team. It's kind of fascinating to see. Obviously, wish it wasn't necessary to be showing up in masks and keeping yourself safe, but that is what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting weeks ahead for sure. Obviously, as we mentioned, one of the players unfortunately did test positive for COVID-19 this week, but it sounds like that player obviously was not there last weekend. And just breaking earlier today, DC United are scheduled to begin full team training tomorrow. So they did get the approval to do that. This will be the first time that they're going to be doing the full team sessions instead of the small groups that they'd been doing over the past week. And then, of course, for a long time before that, it was just the individual workouts that a lot of players were doing on their own. So, I mean, super exciting news. We've got a tournament coming up. We've got full team practice. I mean, you guys have played soccer a lot longer than I have. How much of a difference is that going to make for these guys?
Oh, it's completely different. And while we were at the event, and Kevin Paredes was so excited, and he was like asking Earl Edwards Jr., like, are we going full team next week? Are we going, like, is it happening? They were so pumped for it. And they're competitors. They're going to go out there, and this is what they do. They want to go toe-to-toe and prove that they're better or, better than they used to be. And I think it's the world of difference. We're a little bit behind the curve here, which has me slightly worried. We found out the DC United will be playing some teams soon, and some of these teams have been playing together for a while, but I think the team will hit the ground running. I think they're ready and they're up for it.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to use that as an excuse, right? I mean, DC United's not going to fall back and say that we didn't have as much time as other teams. I think they're going to go all in and really start training hard and getting prepared for this tournament. I think that time that they're going to be able to spend in Orlando preparing for the tournament is going to mean a whole lot too.
We've talked before about how you've got some new faces on the roster, and the team is going to look different than it has in past years. So I'll be very interested to see whether the time off and the break puts everyone on a more level pegging when it comes to getting out there and shaking off the rust and figuring out how to play with each other again, or if that means you're just further back when it comes time to get out there. I imagine it'll probably be a little bit of both. I certainly never played at the level that these guys play at, but there's only so many times you can touch a ball in your backyard or run sprints by yourself to replicate being out there and working with your teammates, knowing where they're going to be, figure out how to execute and coach the game plan. It's a tough task, but they're professionals, and I'm sure they'll get to it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of rust today, and I watched some of the La Liga games coming back, which is exciting, and we talk more about world soccer later in the show for once, since we've got some more domestic topics. But you're right, seeing some players, it's been so long since they've had practice together, and then also playing against another team as a whole. I mean, it's going to be over 4 or 5 months, 4 months or so.
I mean, we just went through an off season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not to get too much into the world soccer, but I watched the Italian Coppa game with Juventus, and I'm watching Ronaldo, who is supposed to be one or two in the world, and he looked terrible. Like he didn't have a touch or anything. So, man, I don't want to put down the tournament unless I'm sure those guys will get ready. I hope it's not like that. I think the tournament down in Disney will bring out the competitive fires in all of them, and maybe they'll care a little bit more than Juventus has to.
Yeah, I have all the faith in the world that you guys will put down the MLS tournament.
Yeah, it's like, we're not going to put down the tournament. What are you talking about?
I know exactly where we're headed here, and we got to talk about it. So the tournament, MLS, the first men's sport, obviously in the U.S. to return a week or two behind the NWSL. They're going to have a big chunk of the national attention on them, and all the time in the world to come up with a great name. They took the first name somebody threw out as the only thing I can come up with. It's called MLS is Back Tournament. I don't know if we ran out of time there.
I think maybe it was like available as a hashtag or something. I don't know.
Well, they do use MLS is Back for the opening week of the season, so maybe that's what they...
That makes it even worse, I think.
It's descriptive. I mean, Lord knows we don't need another randomly named tournament during the middle of the season that they might think about doing moving forward. So maybe I'm okay with not having that. But.
So it does kick off July 8th. Some of the important things to note here, the group stage games, there are 6 groups, 5 groups of 4, 1 group of 6, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Each team will play 3 group stage games. All those games are within your conference unless you're Nashville and you're actually in now your second conference of the year.
Second conference of your history.
Right.
3 games in.
But then as you move to the knockout stage, those games will not count toward the regular season standings, obviously, because everybody would end up with an uneven number of games by the end of that. But so you ask, why do the players care? Well, there's a $1.1 million prize, which is significant, but you also get the 2021 CONCACAF Champions League berth that was kind of rumored for a while, and they weren't sure how they were going to pull it off. That took the place of the highest finisher of the non-supporter shield winning conference, right? So one small nuance is that Canadian teams are actually eligible. So if Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver win this tournament, they would get the slot. So
that's fair. I think that's worth it. The $1.1 million is interesting to me because there's been a lot of disconnect recently between what MLS makes money-wise and what the players are getting. So I wonder if the TAM guy balls out in the tournament and like wins it for you and like requests the DP spot, and he's like, look, I earned you $1.1 million. Do you have to? Is that what the players are playing here for? Or I don't know.
I think the money's going to go to the players, though, in theory. Like, I think that purse money goes
so it's
to
like
the
prize
players.
money.
Like $100,000 a piece. I have to assume that's how they got to 1.1. But
I guess, but then just for this, then only the starting 11 would get paid, right? So like, I don't mean,
there's no other,
Yeah, I don't know how they got to 1.1.
None of those 5 subs get anything.
You have to start.
Well, man, you got 5 subs, like you can make up for it.
I don't know. I think it's a little bit ridiculous still.
I do think the CCL qualifying is interesting. I think we all kind of expected it to come from the U.S. Open Cup berth. I don't know if we've seen any news on whether that's going to happen, although
we've not.
I tend to doubt it, considering where that tends to fall in the hierarchy. But to take it away from the regular season, yeah, that's probably the lowest priority of the slots. And I'm not sure how I feel about allowing the Canadian teams to take those spots either.
I've heard Ike Opara go on the record and say that he hates CCL and he would be glad if he didn't make the tournament. So I don't know if the players will be up for that one.
Yeah,
honestly.
I don't think it's something that they're super competitive for. I mean, I think perhaps like once you're in the tournament,
a shorter off season, and they have to travel all over the
and like the beginning of the season's messed up. Yeah,
I mean, there's a very fair question you could ask of, will there even be a CONCACAF season next year? I mean, we've seen qualifying for the World Cup has not come together yet. It doesn't sound like from the general board meeting this past week that we're any closer to that, because even as domestic teams are starting to open up, it's a whole new variable with international travel. So yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you don't even know if this is going to happen.
But there's enough riding on the tournament, and I think we're glad to have some form of soccer back. We'll see how it goes.
From my perspective, I can't wait. I'm excited. I think it's going to be great. I know I've heard, I think from all three of you in various times, that you guys are maybe not as excited about
I go
the
back and
tournament,
forth between, is this a joke or am I excited to see DC United play?
I know you're excited. I know it.
So excited for MLS soccer to come back. Like, I'm very excited to be watching DC United and all the rest of the league be playing again. I don't understand the point of having these other games that don't matter towards your season. Like, to me, that just says something about how the league is looking at the rest of the season after the tournament and about how it's going to be an incomplete season. Like, they're not trying to fit all the games in.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's any chance we're going to get to the 34 that
not all the games, yeah, but to me, it says that they're less concerned about getting those in and more concerned with, I don't know, playing the silly tournament.
And I was listening to an interview with Don Garber where he was talking about how the league was kind of going through this process, and this was pretty much the only idea they had, was that they were going to do some kind of tournament. And that changed several times over the course of the last few months, because initially you had no idea when teams were going to be able to practice. You were thinking you had to get everybody there in order to do any kind of practice and then move on to doing the tournament. And obviously we've gotten to where we are now, but it sounds like they've been trying to adjust along the way, and maybe some of the things are misses, but it is what it is, and now this is what we got to look forward to.
I think the big thing, I think we all recognize why they had to go to a neutral site in order to restart in any capacity, just because so much of the U.S. is just not
because
on the
they're
playing
cheap
field.
and didn't want to play for the flights. That's
They're chartering down there, right?
I think there's still like the risk of travel right now. Like, even if you're on a chartered flight, you're still in a new city. Like, you're still staying in a hotel, you're experiencing different things. Like, I think that comparing the way that MLS is handling it, comparing it to how like the Premier League is handling it, those are like two completely different. Like, you can't have that conversation because England's so much smaller. Like,
so Sam, are you suggesting that they should have waited to restart the season until we could just start a version of the regular season again? Or are you saying like Disney's fine, but they should all be regular season games? Like, what's your ideal scenario?
Yeah, I'm saying that Disney's fine. They should have all just been like regular season games that count towards the season, and then you have some semblance of postseason at the end of this. I think having it in a neutral location is fine. I think that all the people are saying that MLS is so far behind these other leagues because they couldn't figure out how to have every game in the home stadium is a very unfair statement, because again, just like travel in this country is so different. Each city is, like we said earlier, DC United is one of the last teams to be able to play. So is it fair to ask, one of the first teams that were able to play to come to DC where they're at a higher risk of being infected? Like, that doesn't seem fair to me. This country is so big and there are so many different criteria in each city. Like, I just don't think that's fair.
We're live on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the MLS is Back tournament. If you think it's a good idea, if we think it should be done differently, scrapped altogether, tweet the show using the hashtag Tried and True DCU if you'd like to join the conversation.
Yeah, and you wondered, too, with coming back, and, we talked about this being the first men's league to come back, and WSL will be out there beforehand, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing that as well. How much of this is MLS looking at this as a marketing opportunity and saying the casual fan who hasn't seen anything in a while can tune in and say, hey, there is a tournament going on. Maybe they don't have strong feelings about whether the tournament should matter or not, but they're more likely to say, well, these guys are playing for something. It will grab my interest, and if I end up watching 5 or 6 games over the course of a few weeks, maybe I'll become an MLS fan.
Yeah, that's 5 more than they would have.
That's exactly right.
We talked about it before, about the optics of this tournament and how it'll appeal to the outside fans, and I was questionable until the draw happened, and I know we don't want to it's a giant can of worms, but literally like every single rivalry got randomly chosen. I'm not gonna we left the tinfoil at home, we didn't bring it, but
I want to know though, yes or no, everybody's got to answer, myself included, was the draw rigged? Joshua?
I believe Charlie Davies. No, it's just
Sam.
I have a hard time believing that was completely random.
Black?
I don't think it was, but it wouldn't take a lot to swing me the other way.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it was rigged, but it is a bit comical to think that, like, it was just so MLS, right? Like, the morning of the draw, they laid out how this whole thing was going to work. We already had questions. You moved a team to another conference. One group's got 6 teams somehow instead of doing 2 groups of 5 in either conference. Who knows? They did the 16 group, and then, like, that morning, random press release comes out. We're putting Miami in that group. Yeah. Just because we want to kick the game off with the Florida teams, which, by the way, nobody can go to the game.
It literally doesn't matter.
But also, I think you tweeted out, or you sent not tweeted out, but you sent it within our group chat. Like, you sent a picture of a screenshot of them, an article that was like the results of the draw, and it had been posted the day before.
I do think that the draw was pre-recorded.
Oh, without a doubt.
I think they pre-recorded it to make sure that, like, somebody didn't accidentally pick ball or Easter egg 8 and it had already been chosen or something. Like, I think they did all those things.
I don't know,
It
man.
actually made it look more fake.
I don't know. You know what? I have a hard time seeing why they wouldn't have pre-recorded it, but there were also quite a few clumsy moments that I was like, if I were in charge of this, I absolutely would have let them re-record
They
that.
left in the part with the 3252 guy trying to rename, probably correctly, so trying to rename El Trafico. I have strong opinions, but I feel like the league wouldn't have left that in if they had pre-recorded. I don't know. I still got to trust Charlie Davis. What Charlie Davis says is what happened.
I think this, leaving that in plays right into why I think MLS chose to do the tournament this way of like 3 regular season games. We got to get some more, and then we have a tournament because everybody in the U.S. loves playoffs, loves tournaments, right? And they've got the market, right? I mean, that's what you guys were saying earlier. Like, they're going to have a 9 a.m. game and then 8 p.m. and 10:30 every night for like a month. And there's baseball can't get out of their own way. I mean, baseball is in the worst shape I've ever seen of coming to an agreement here. So, like, they're out. NBA, we got players ready to revolt and not play at all in that tournament. So that could go down the tubes. Hockey is kind of gone dark. I mean, they sounds like they have a plan, but I don't know exactly when it starts. And then, obviously, NFL season doesn't start until the fall anyway. So, looking across the other major sports in the U.S., it's women's soccer and men's soccer that have gotten it together, and I think they want to take it all advantage of that. And I don't know. I guess my only concern, Sam, would be if, DC United is playing Cincinnati in prime time on a Saturday night for a regular season game. I mean, I don't know if people are going to be excited to watch that if it's not a knockout game and they're not they're not us.
And that's why the teams were seeded into this anyway. If they're just regular season games, you wouldn't seed anyway. You just cast, pick straws, and that's who you play, and that's what it counts.
And seeded based on whether they made the semifinals of the tournament of the MLS Cup last year, not based on regular season standings or if you made CCL or any of these other various machinations that we put into it. Just saying, hey, you've made the semifinals of the tournament last year, which is apparently the only thing we care about. That's what informs your seeding for this completely unrelated thing.
This whole thing is so MLS.
I mean, I guess they had to seed some teams for some reason. I was a little
don't
bit
think they
confused on the seeding as a whole. I mean,
you could for regular season games. It's just, we follow a pattern, but it's basically random. I don't know why this couldn't. They wanted matchups.
They did, and they got them. They certainly got them, whether it was fake or not.
And now it will be El Trafico in prime time, just like you said, and they'll get the TV viewings, and they'll get the guy that wasn't going to watch.
And that's why I'm like, this wasn't completely random. Maybe they didn't give Carlos Bocanegra a list of eggs to choose, but I think it was definitely because this is MLS, and and anytime LA needs another player, they just throw them another DP slot. Like, I think that they catered it to what they needed this tournament to be to meet the MLS
counterpoint.
goal for the tournament.
DC United had a good draw, so I don't know why
did.
That wouldn't make sense. I don't know. The league doesn't rig anything for us.
Yeah,
I think that might have just been a byproduct, though. I think we were just not high.
They rigged enough things, and DC United
it
got
just,
a good
fell
draw. Fell
into our lap. Yeah.
Let's talk about that draw. We'll break down all of the groups here, but what we'll do is we'll throw it to break first. I'm out of beer. I need a new one. I don't know about you guys. And we'll be right back. We'll talk through all the groups right here on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Can't listen to us live on YouTube? Find Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or Pocket Casts the morning after the match.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 90 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening live. If you want to join the conversation, let us know what you think in real time using the chat on YouTube Live, on Twitter using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU, or text us at 202-892-6328.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 60 seconds.
Let us know what you think between games on Twitter at hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU or email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken, will be back in less than 30 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at Tried and True DCU. Again, that's Instagram or Twitter at Tried and True DCU.
And we are back here on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. And we just broke down the way the groups came together, but now we got to talk about how they came out. So as I mentioned, 6 groups, 5 groups of 4, 1 group of 6. The Eastern Conference were gifted Nashville as part of making this even numbers on either side. And as I mentioned, the draw started actually way earlier than we thought when Thursday morning news cycle MLS dropped a little nugget that that Inter Miami would be entered into Group A with Orlando, so that the first game could be calling it the Florida Derby. What are we calling this? Do we know?
They'll come up with something cheesy.
Yeah.
The Disney Derby.
The Disney Derby.
Like
That's actually not bad. That could work.
It's better than hashtag MLS.
Oh no, I've seen it. It's FC versus CF. That's what the derby is called. FC
No
versus
way.
CF. No, it's like on social media.
Get out. So, as you mentioned, teams were seeded. In the East, it was Orlando because, I don't know, we got to give them some at some point. Toronto and Atlanta were seeded. And then in the West, Seattle, Real Salt Lake, and LAFC. DC United came out in, I think we all agree, probably the best situation, at least with the way that this draw went. I mean, it could have been we could have been in a group with like Nashville. Toronto was seeded, obviously, so like maybe you sub Nashville and Orlando in or something, or Nashville and Cincy in. But
No, we don't. We'll play Cincy again.
that's true. Maybe we'll do better away or neutral. But Group C is where DC United landed: Toronto, New England, Montreal, and the Black and Red. And I remember watching this happen, and I was like, oh, maybe Group A might not be the worst. Like, you could dodge getting a couple of the good teams and whatever. And then as Group C's come together, I'm like, nope, I'm going to go there. And that's where we ended
That's
up.
where we went, yeah.
What do you guys think?
It's Group Cupcake. That's what the C stands for. DC United has a pretty reasonable shot to get through. I mean, there's the team that beat us in the playoffs last season, and besides that, I don't see really any challenge.
And the team that ended our oh no, never mind. Since he's not in the group.
No. Just but really familiar foes, and I think Ben knows how to beat these teams, so it should be fun.
Yeah, we only have to come in second, right? It's
Yes,
the top 2 teams.
second place or a third place if we look good, but I doubt with our group that we would get one of those third place bids.
Yeah.
Sam, you're such a proper soccer fan. We only have to come in second because there's no way we could win the group. But we just gotta know at the bottom of the bar.
I have been a DC United fan for as long as I can remember, and I understand lovingly how we can sometimes bottle like playoff and must-win situations. So I think that we will make it out of the group, and then I'm excited to see what happens out. Although I was jokingly saying earlier that as much as I have been, not the biggest fan of this tournament, that probably means DC United's going to win it. So you're welcome, everybody.
It should be fun though. So you have Toronto, like I said, who knocked us out. They have Bradley and Josie Altidore, who are like the villains of the U.S. men's national team.
Josie will probably be healthy.
Maybe.
Maybe like 20 minutes in, and then But then you have Montreal, who's now coached by Henri, and then New England, who's coached by Bruce. There's a lot of familiar ties there. It should be dramatic, maybe. I don't know.
There's been some interesting articles coming out, especially on Major League Soccer.com, talking through the tournament, talking through all of the coverage, right? And a lot of the analysts were getting dogged for calling New England a playoff team at the beginning of the season. And yet, I think in one of the articles I read was like, hey, DC United should be a dark horse in this group. Like, they've got a great shot to get out. Like, a lot of the players have played together for a while. Like, they shouldn't need a ton of time to spin back up. The group's not that hard. We got them finishing third behind the Revs. And I was like, wait a second. I mean, we could very well finish third or fourth in this group. I think it's a pretty good draw, but I haven't seen enough out of this team this year to make me feel terribly confident. But
well, no one has, but
yeah, true.
No, we're absolutely making it out of this group.
I don't know if I would say absolutely.
First or second, like
Sam, I don't know. New England, we're pretty hot for parts of last year. Bruce is going to get that team. Bruce will get his team into the playoffs no matter what, right? He's done it time and time again. I don't want to bet against him.
Did they make the playoffs last year?
Did he make the World Cup?
They were.
They were 17.
No, that's right. Okay, they snuck in.
But he got them hot. They've got some cool new DPs. Carlos Gil, Bo plays for them. Really fun player. Montreal is a big question mark. I don't know if Henry is a manager really, or if he's even managed Montreal at all yet. It should be interesting.
Now, if he lifts up his boots and got out there, it'd be another question perhaps. But I think the biggest thing I wanted going into this group selection was not to be in the group of 6. From a competitive standpoint, I'd rather you have the opportunity to play all the people you're going to be measured against. And if DC finds a way not to make it out of the group, it will be on their own head. Yeah. Whereas if you were in that group of 6 and you only played a couple of the other teams there, you could potentially not play either of the 2 teams that advanced and won the group. So that was really all I wanted, and I was glad to see it.
It easily could have been a lot worse. I mean, we could have taken Cincy's spot in Group E, and it would have been Atlanta, New Jersey, and Columbus, and I'd be feeling a lot worse about this. Group A, it's interesting, and I think I told you guys, even though I went on record and said I didn't think it was rigged, one of the things that I found fascinating was that the way Group A shook out, because obviously not everybody plays everybody, but there's not a single team in that group that either plays both New York City FC and Philly or plays neither of them. It worked out that everybody gets at least one of them, or everybody gets exactly one of them. And that felt to me as one of the things that was a little bit questionable. But as we go through some of these other groups, I mean, obviously they made it happen. So Group A is Orlando and Miami, New York City FC, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Nashville. So that group, it's going to be tough to get out of there. I mean, there's a couple easy teams, but City and Philly are good.
I'm glad it's that way because I mean, they crash out of playoffs every year, but City and Philly were pretty hot for, I mean, maybe a couple seasons now. I could imagine a group where Chicago, Nashville, and Orlando are in a group. They're the 3 teams that play each other in that group, and then a terrible team that has never made the playoffs gets through.
Maybe that's why they seeded it, so we'd avoid that.
Not never with Chicago, but like in most people's lifetimes, never. Yeah, I think it doesn't matter. It's just a fun tournament, right?
It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to the Orlando-Miami game, honestly. I think it'll be fun. I think that will become a bit of a rivalry. It's tough that their first ever derby is behind closed doors. But I think that'll be fun. And it'll be interesting to see if Nashville can get something going because, I mean, they had a lot of momentum with fans and stuff to start the season. And, they're going to have a tough road coming back from this if this entire season is, behind closed doors. But could they get something going in Group A? Who do you guys have coming out of Group A?
Oh, I'm surprised MLS hasn't done this, but I would enjoy like a pick'em style where you like earn points by picking who goes through.
And maybe we'll stop around.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I think for Group A, if NYC and Philly can both get through, then that's what's going to happen.
Has to be, right?
They're by far, in a way, the best teams in that group.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I mean, those teams consistently beat DC United, and the others don't. That's my bar.
That's your bar. Black.
I agree. I think NYC and Philly. I also can't imagine Orlando finding a way to advance. If I had to guess, I'd say either Nashville or Miami ends up as one of the 3s and gets through to the next round.
Yeah.
I could see Chicago sneaking into the next round and then like fizzling out pretty quickly after that.
I also don't think the winner of the tournament's going to come out of this group.
I think that's pretty clear. Yeah.
I mean, it's not a group from the West, so.
Yeah, well, we'll see. So before we get back to DC United's group, let's go to Group E. That's the only Eastern Conference group we haven't talked about yet. Atlanta was seeded, and they landed Cincy, the Red Bulls, and Columbus. Thoughts on Group E and who you might have coming out?
I think this is the only group that you can make an argument for group of death. I think maybe Group F, where we're in LAFC, LA Galaxy, Houston, Portland, but Portland chokes all the time. Houston will show up for spots of a season.
Merritt Paulson just heard that, and he's coming.
Galaxy recently have started choking. LFC have never not choked. So I think Group E is the group of death minus Cincy.
Is Portland going to be able to bring their log to Orlando?
It's a good question. Maybe they'll have one of their media folks chop down one of
What's
the
his
palm
name?
trees.
Like a
Timber
palm
Joe?
tree.
Polynesian or
No,
something.
Timber Joe is one of their essential people
Yeah,
that
there you
they
go.
bring down.
I don't know if I want the teams to recreate some of the things they do at home, or if I just want them to say, "This is Orlando. We're going to be here, play the game. Let's get it over with, and then get back into the regular season as soon as we
Oh,
can."
I want it.
As long as the media coverage does a better job of creating an atmosphere than the fake fans that La Liga pulled from like FIFA '98 and dropped into these stadiums, like we gotta do better than that, guys.
Don Garber has talked about like doing some innovative stuff with the media cast, but I'll get back to the other Eastern Conference Group E. Red Bull Columbus is starting to become a little bit of a classic in the playoffs. I think Red Bulls choke again, but Columbus chokes also. So I'll put Atlanta and Columbus, but I could see a third bid going to the other team since he loses all
I've
the
got
games.
Atlanta and Jersey.
Yeah, I think I would go for Atlanta and Jersey too.
I think Atlanta and Jersey. I would like to see what Atlanta does for striker. They haven't played a game without
Ooh.
Joseph Martinez.
That's
It's a big point.
Well, they did play the CCL game, but I think they're still trying to figure it out. They've had plenty of time to think about how they're going to do it. But I think each of these teams beat Cincinnati. 3 points might be enough to get you in consideration for that potential best fourth team, best third place team.
That's a really interesting point, and one I was going to ask you guys. I mean, what do you think the point threshold is? I mean, 4 third-place teams across all 6 groups are going through.
It's going to depend on how the teams come out and play it. You know, some of them are going to potentially come out and bunker and see what happens. You're not going to have teams playing at home or away trying to, capitalize on those advantages. It's really going to depend on how the teams approach this and how they're going to play it out. So that said, I would expect that you're probably going to have some rusty games and some freak goals, and you're probably going to need 3 or 4 points to be one of those 4 third-place teams.
Well, I think that whoever third place in Group A, right, they basically automatically
Right.
get out. The way that the teams play each other and the way that divides up, like there are more
Should be,
points
yeah.
for grabs in that group. So
I
don't
think
see that
that's
not
almost
happening.
assured. And then
Yeah.
you have 3 more third place finishes out of 5 groups.
Yeah.
I don't see DC United's group getting it unless the play is just phenomenal. I could see
I think 5 points you're through pretty much regardless, right? If
Right.
you can pull that, you should be through. You may not even need to dip into the third places. 4 points, you got a decent shot. If it gets down to 3, it's got to be the best 3-point team probably. I think, but
I think it'd be very hard not to finish as top 2 if you've got 5 points.
right, no,
Right.
I would agree. And maybe unless you're in Group A, that could be the only
yeah,
way
that's
through.
what I mean. There's just more points up for grab in that group. So I think that points-wise is going to be the really interesting one to follow.
Yeah. So before we switch to the West, let's go back to Group C for DC United. It's got to be Toronto and DC for me, right? It has to be. Although I fully expect DC United will make us sweat it out. I think they come in second in that group. What do you guys think?
Henry had Montreal playing really, I wouldn't say well, but he had them playing a system in CCL. I watched both of those games, and they didn't win the second one to go on, but he had them playing the way he wanted to play. And if they are able to emulate that, they could steal points off of it. I don't think they'll beat teams. They were playing super defensively, like basically didn't want the ball ever. I could see them stealing points, and maybe that could be the undoing of New England or DC United. Toronto go through for me because they've proven their top players come in when they need them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, man, I hope DC United gets there.
I think my problem looking at this group is that if you're trying to figure out who's going to be the best third place team, you've got to have a team that scores goals. And DC United hasn't really shown an ability to do that yet. If we get in and have a 1-0 game, then say a 0-0 tie, and then lose another game 2-0, I don't know if that's going to be a margin that's going to put you through as a third place team. So I think you've got to finish second. I think they're capable of it, so I would probably go with DC and Toronto going through, probably Toronto winning the group. But I would not be surprised if we're sitting here sweating going to the third game, trying to game out possibilities.
Could also see Ben just squeaking 3-1-0 wins and just topping the group.
Yeah.
Or a couple 1-0 wins and like a 0-0 draw. Like I think
The last game of the group, if Ben's got 6 points, he's bunkering the whole time with 0-0.
So you say that, but I was just thinking, these count for the regular season too. So like in theory, that third game, you shouldn't really be resting players, right? Like if it was a World Cup, which is what they're billing it as, like a World Cup style tournament,
That's interesting.
you would be. But as Sam's pointed out, we don't know how this regular season is going to end. I mean, I think the hope is that they're hitting 20, 24 games. I don't know if the coronavirus is going to agree with that. And so it does, that third game, I mean, if you're through, you better still be playing for all 3 points because you might need them.
Do you care about the 3 regular season points or resting your squad for the MLS's back bracket?
I think you have to approach
I really hope the first one.
I think you have to approach it like a tournament, though, because as soon as you get out of that mindset of you're here to win, you're here to advance, then you might as well go.
Ben did that in the playoffs, and it killed us. Or no, the game before the playoffs, and we came out so flat.
I mean, Ben kind of does that a little bit, right? And if you look at our recent history, like if he feels comfortable with playoffs, he'll sit back a little bit and kind of pump the brakes, but then that just really takes the momentum out of the team, and I hope that doesn't happen again. But I mean, John, I'm glad you brought it up because I'm trying to piece out how these things are going to go, but not knowing how the rest of the season will be, I think.
Yeah.
You can't sit back for that last game.
And maybe you use your 5 subs more aggressively in that game if you're already through. But these guys have had 4 or 5 months off playing a third game in the space of a week or 10 days or whatever it is. Yeah, you want to be, have your edge, but just play the games.
Yeah, and I don't think we've seen – I know we haven't seen the schedule with dates and times, and I'm not at all frustrated about it. But if we play, the team that's, like, already eliminated in the group last, potentially, and let's say we're sitting on 6 points, you could go for a win, but, like, maybe you're also getting guys like Griffin Yao, Kevin Paredes, Eric Sorga, real minutes. And I think we'd all be super excited to see that happen. We've got a few minutes left before Steven Birnbaum joins the show. Let's try to go through the West really quickly. So Group B, we've got Seattle, Dallas, Vancouver, and San Jose. Who do you guys have coming out of that group?
Probably Seattle and Dallas.
I think I'd go Seattle, San Jose. San Jose was playing strong down the stretch.
Listen, my heart said San Jose. I just didn't. I think that Dallas has. I don't think about Dallas as a good team, but I think that they steadily have been building. So I could see them really trying to powerhouse it through.
They sell before they get there, though. They sell every time before they get there, and they don't have the DP to carry them. So I'm with Black on this one. Seattle, because they're talented and they're won the MLS Cup, they'll be ready. And then Almeida will have San Jose running and pressing the entire field for this tournament. I think Dallas fails again. Vancouver will just not score a point. I don't
think you need a DP to carry you through 3 games, though.
When the rest of your players are 18 years old, you need someone who's got that experience.
I don't think the pressure is as big in the MLS's back tournament trademark as it would be in the playoffs. So I'm going to take Seattle and Dallas. Let's go to Group D. Real Salt Lake, Sporting Kansas City, Colorado, and Minnesota.
This one is a bloodbath between teams. Teams that actually hate each other, and they're all around the same sort of quality. Real quick, though, RSL, SKC.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it going all the ways, right? Because I think none of these teams have really been in form.
Oh, RSL made the playoffs and were hot, knocked out.
Yeah, as I was saying it, RSL, Colorado,
RSL was seeded. Come on, Sam.
I think yeah, but weren't they the ones that were seeded because they ran out of ways to seat teams?
They found ways to win. They found ways to win last season.
I think for me, Minnesota goes through. I think the strong defensive performance they put on last year lends itself well to tournament games you see this year. And I think Sporting comes back. They had lots of injuries.
They have something to prove.
CCL issues last year. This is generally a team that you expect to be right at the top of the conference, and the fact that they weren't in the conversation down the stretch, I'm sure, is about to be grating at them.
Yep, I'm with you, Black. Sporting and Minnesota for me. Group F is the final group: LAFC, LA Galaxy, Houston, and Portland.
I'll jump. LAFC, because they're the best team in the league. LA Galaxy will go because Houston and Portland will crash, and then Portland will go through as well because they'll get a third-place team because those teams are marketable.
I would switch. Yeah. I don't know. I might switch Galaxy and Portland, but I would agree with those. I think, 3 would go out.
I think LAFC definitely goes through. I do not know which of the other teams is going to be second.
I don't either. I'm stuck too, right?
I could really see Houston or Portland surprising us. I think you kind of expect Galaxy based on what we've seen in the past, but they're still
their defense is terrible.
Yeah.
And they don't have. I mean, they've got Chicharito, but they don't have the magic that was Zlatan anymore. I have a hard time choosing. I think if I had to go out on a limb, I'd probably go with Portland, but not surprised if the other two get through.
I think I'm going to agree with you there as well, Black. I've got LAFC and Portland going through. The Galaxy will go through as a third-place team, I think. It is kind of funny. I joked about it earlier with the Timbers owner being upset with the draw that Seattle got. But when you look at it, my final question before we go to break and bring Steven on was going to be, which group is the group of death? Group D and Group F are both tough, man. I don't see a group of death in the East. I guess it's Group E minus Cincy, but in the West, D and F are just tough, man. And B, there's not much to. I don't think it'll be.
I think they're like tough for different reasons, though.
I don't think you can fairly call a group of death if 3 of the teams could still go through. I think if you were doing a single elimination setup, then we can have that conversation about whether it was an unfair draw or what have you. But in this case, you've got to get one win and a draw to get through. I don't really think you can call it a group of death.
Well, the whole thing kicks off July 8th. Teams will be headed down to the Swan and Dolphin resorts at Walt Disney World. The games will be at ESPN's Wide World of Sports, as I mentioned earlier, 9 a.m., 8 p.m., and 10:30 p.m. daily. So we're obviously going to talk a lot more about this tournament as we lead up to it. But for now, we'll toss it to break. We've got DC United's captain, Steven Birnbaum, joining the show here in just a few minutes on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Can't listen to us live on YouTube? Find Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or Pocket Casts the morning after the match.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 90 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening live. If you want to join the conversation, let us know what you think in real time using the chat on YouTube Live, on Twitter using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU, or text us at 202-892-6328.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 60 seconds.
Let us know what you think between games on Twitter at hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU or email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 30 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU. Again, that's Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU.
This is Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken, and we came roaring back there, but we're excited because we've got DC United captain Steven Birnbaum on the phone. Steven, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to the show. First things first, we're obviously still living in a semi-quarantined world, so how are you and the family holding up?
Yeah, all is good over here. We're just, I think everyone's getting a little, stir crazy, and as things start opening up, we still want to be careful and try and practice social distancing as much as possible. But we're getting out and going on a lot of walks and stuff like that. But no, we're enjoying family time and just kind of hanging out mostly. Not much else to do.
No, that's good. I bet you're enjoying being a stay-at-home dad for the time being. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, definitely doing a lot of dad work around the house. My wife works full time from home, so yeah, I'm on dad duty when I'm not at practice.
No, that's super exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned obviously we're still staying safe and wearing masks and practicing social distancing, but the city is starting to open up slowly but surely. What are you most excited to get back to? Any, restaurants or favorite parts of the city that you're excited to go visit again?
Yeah, we just love going to restaurants. I think that's something that my wife and I enjoy the most. We just really enjoy going out and trying new places, and obviously going to some of our favorite places around the city. So, now we have a daughter and we want to take her out there, and it's good for her to be out and around other people besides just us sometimes. So, no, we're excited to get back out there and just have some good food. I think she's probably getting sick of my cooking and vice versa.
Any recommendations?
We're really excited because our favorite restaurant in the city was Le Diplomat, and then we loved going to brunch at Peacock Cafe down in Georgetown. So we're excited to get back to those two restaurants. Those are kind of the staples for us.
It's great to hear, Steven. We know you've called DC home for the past few years, but you're originally from California. So with all this news about a tournament coming up, is it Disney World or Disneyland? Which one's better?
I always grew up with Disneyland. I lived 15 minutes from Disneyland back in California as a kid. So, we had season passes, and we would go after school, just occasionally, like once a week. And no, it's just crazy because we were just so close, and we were really spoiled. But I think I went down to Disney World as a kid once, as a family when we went to Florida. So I'm excited. I haven't been back there in a long time, and no, it's amazing down there. So they're going to do a great job with the tournament, and we're just excited to get back to be able to play. Really, is the biggest thing.
Before we dive in on the tournament, was there a go-to ride back at Disneyland when you were hanging out there growing up?
I think it was Splash Mountain for me. I thought that was cool. I think just being able to go through the water, and no, I don't know why that one just sticks out for me.
Always a classic. So
yeah.
It sounds like you're going to have plenty of experience in the Orlando area in the next few weeks or so. What are your thoughts on getting back out there and this tournament that MLS has come up with, and how do you feel about the name MLS is back?
Yeah, it's just great to be be able to play. I think that's the biggest thing. Guys are just really excited to get out there and to be able to play. We're starting our first full training as a team. I think on tomorrow, so that's when we'll really get back into it. I think the league did a good job of kind of making sure there was incentive based for the players and teams throughout the tournament. So in the group stage, the points count towards this season. And whatever happens after this tournament, we'll have some form of season, I guess. Yeah, and then we'll have I guess there's a CONCACAF Champions League spot if you win the whole thing. So we're just excited to get back down there and play, and it'll be kind of fun. It's something different.
Yeah, we saw the draw come out on Thursday with the teams that we've got lined up. DC United being Group C with Montreal, Toronto, and New England. What are your thoughts on the draw there?
Yeah, excited about the draw. We're very familiar with all those teams. Obviously we'd like to get back at Toronto for what they did last year in the playoff stuff. So that would be great. And we know the teams. We played Montreal this preseason, so we kind of know a little bit about them. And New England's always a tough opponent, but in our eyes, we're going in there to win this thing. So we're thinking all these teams are beatable, and we're going to go in there with that mindset. And there's no home field or away advantage. So it's basically just a neutral site, and best team's going to win.
No, that's super exciting, and we're all really excited for you guys, obviously, to be back, and we're glad to hear that you're in it to win it, because it's the first games are regular season games, and we need those points. The chance to play in CONCACAF again is something that excites me as a fan. So hopefully that's something you guys as players are looking forward to too.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned training with the team, and obviously, starting tomorrow, you guys finally get to go back to full team practice. What's the atmosphere been like over the past few weeks, at least in the small groups, and how excited must you guys be to really get back out there?
Yeah, it's just a little weird, obviously you go there and you wear a mask and everyone's far apart from everyone, and you just can we only do passing, and it's a lot of fitness, and it's a lot of just technical work, and so you get some form of fitness from that, but you don't get I guess, game fitness, if that makes sense. There's a lot more cutting involved when you're reacting or trying to defend or, dribbling at someone. So it's just going to be nice to get back in a soccer format, I guess. We've just been doing so much passing, and, there's only so much you can do with that. So it'll be good to get back to competitive and competitive, I guess, little games within practice, which is what I love. I love that. For me as a defender, to be able to go and tackle someone is great, and I haven't done that, 3.5, 4 months.
Yeah, I think we're all super excited for y'all to get back and start playing again. While you're playing those games, we've seen you get the captain's armband back this season. What is it like to be captain of DC United right now?
Yeah, it's exciting. I think we got a great group of guys, and a solid team. And I've been around the league not long enough, and we have a ton of veterans on our team. So it's going to be I'm the captain, but we also have a group of leaders in the team that everyone's going to have to pick up their slack and kind of hold everyone accountable. So it's good. It's exciting. We got a great group of guys. We've been talking throughout the whole quarantine, and we did Zoom calls, we did some happy hours, and everyone's just excited to get back together and do it. But no, it's always an honor to be a captain for DC United.
Yeah, we've seen some changes to the team. I mean, I remember watching you when you were back there with Boswell and then Kemp, and we've seen these great players come and go, but you've always been back there for us. What has that been like? How does it feel to be almost a stalwart in the back for us?
Yeah, it is crazy because a lot of these people are, the guys that come through are, your friends, and you have great relationships with these people, and and they it's kind of weird because I have been here, and I think it's rare that players stay at a club for a long period of time. So I've been very thankful to be here, and we love the city and we love the organization. So I'm very thankful, but it is tough sometimes seeing your friends come and go and guys that you enjoy playing with. So it's been fun meeting new guys and having that, but it is tough having to deal with I guess cohesiveness at the back because you rely so much on the guy next to you.
Sure. You talked about how you all have kind of kept together during the quarantine, doing Zoom calls, things like that. It seems like DC United's got a lot of new faces on the squad this year. How is helping them assimilate been going, and how has that whole process been?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, and that's why we tried to stay in touch as much as possible during the quarantine. Was we do have a lot of new guys where they need to learn how we want to go about playing, and so we not only did we do group call with the staff and front office. Once, I think it was every Monday, we hopped on a 30-minute to an hour call, and then we would do on Thursdays, I think we would do like tactical sessions with defenders with the coach, and then midfielders would have their own session and the forwards would have their own session, and we'd go over film. And so that was great. And then sometimes on Fridays we'd have just a team happy hour where guys could have a beer and talk and just kind of talk about what's going on in their lives. And I thought our group did a really good job of staying in touch and kind of, I don't think we're going to miss a beat coming back into the practices this week.
What can you share with us about the team happy hours? Like, is there a class clown on the team, or a drink you guys all enjoy together, or what's the vibe like then?
No, everyone kind of had their own drink. Fred was cooking in the kitchen one night, which was cool. And some guys would have wine, some would have beer, but it was more of just guys talking about what was going on. It was also a lot of stuff talking about the union and what we were going through at that time.
Yeah, there was a lot going on there. Obviously, you guys lived it, and we had Russell on like right during the middle of it, and obviously learned afterwards some of the things he was dealing with as the player rep in retrospect. But I'm sure you guys are glad to have that all sorted. Yeah,
well, shout out to Russell. He did a great job as our team rep. I mean, it was a lot of work for him, and the board and our union did a great job to get through this, and we're just happy to be able to to play, and that was the biggest thing. And we wanted to be treated fairly, and that's what happened. And Russell and those guys did a phenomenal job of informing us and giving us all the information we needed.
No, that's awesome. And speaking of playing again, right? I mean, there's thinking back over all the years I've watched you play, this is maybe more of an RFK Days thing, but we've still seen it a little bit recently when you moved to forward late in the game when we're pushing for an extra point or trying to bring the draw in, right? So like, how did that get started? And you gotta love when you have that opportunity, right?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I did love it as bad as because it's kind of sucks because you're obviously down or you need a point. But or a goal or whatever. So I did love going up there and trying to make one. But my job was just kind of to create chaos, make sure the ball, just comes down somewhere in the box and I can just kind of flick it on or nod it on to someone, or if I can get it on goal, that's great. But it was just to create chaos and to cause havoc with the other center backs or fullbacks back there and make them think an extra big body in there. So. I did it a lot in college too, so it wasn't really new for me when I came here. And I think there was one year where it kind of worked out a lot for us when I went up there at RFK. I remember those days.
That's awesome. We'll see a little bit of that down in Disney for this tournament. I'd love to see it. But switching gears a little bit, obviously there's a lot going on off the field. Joshua and I were lucky enough to be at Audi Field last weekend when fans and front office and the team came together to paint "I Can't Breathe" across the field. And I know you were there with Gene and Coco. So I was just wondering, what your thoughts were on that gesture that the team made.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Obviously it's a really crazy time, and we're trying to do anything we can to support the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that. The George Floyd death was really tough, and obviously there's systemic racism going on, and anything we can do to help out and make things right is what we wanted to do, and that was our support, and I thought it came off great, and props to our ownership and the front office putting that together, because I thought it came out beautifully, and there was a great turnout from the guys and a lot of support there, so we were happy to just be part of it. My wife and baby just loved being out there, so it was we had fun, and it was for a good cause.
Yeah, I think it was just your wife's birthday, so right?
Her birthday is tomorrow, actually.
Oh.
So we will be celebrating.
Well, happy birthday!
I'll be making pancakes probably in the morning for her and that type of stuff. But no, we're having a good time being home as a family right now.
Yeah, well, happy birthday to her. I think I saw you in a pretty heated cornhole game with Sifi.
Yeah, he's a bachelor, so it's nice to have a good buddy back in town.
Yeah, as long as he's not like becoming your agent and trying to get you to go out to the galaxy as well, then it's fine.
No, he's doing great. No, he's just out here, and it's fun to see him start a job in a new career.
Speaking of other teams, I mean, is there obviously we've got leagues starting up finally again overseas. I for one am super excited for the Premier League to come back this week. Are there any teams over in Europe that you support or you're really looking forward to seeing come back while you guys are putting the finishing touches on the MLS return?
There aren't any. There's not like a specific team, I would say. I think I'm excited for the Premier League to come back. I don't really support one specific team. I used to be a Chelsea fan as a kid growing up, but I kind of phased out of that. But no, I'll watch any soccer that's on, but I mean the Premier League's just the biggest thing for me. I've been watching. I watched some Bundesliga today, and that was fun, but the Premier League's just a little bit different,
Sure. And we got one last question for you. Every player that we have on, we ask this question to, so we're interested to get your response.
All right.
In 30 seconds or less, why should we as supporters buy a jersey with your name on the back?
Wow, that's a great question. All right, so I'm selling myself right now. Is that what you're saying?
We might have to rethink it now that you put it that way.
No, I think no. Just for me, I'm a hard worker, steady guy. I'll do anything for the team. It's not really about me. It's about anything that I can do to help the team win. And I've been here for 7 years, and it's the only club that I've ever played for professionally, and so. Hopefully it's the only club I ever will play for, so I think that's a pretty good reason. So you'll have a guy that's never played for any other team.
No, that's awesome, and we certainly hope to see you finish out your career here. Hopefully with a couple more trophies, maybe even a Disney Cup to go.
Trust me, I hope so. I really hope I don't end my career with trophies. We'd love to get these going.
For sure. Well, listen, Steven, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, especially on the eve of your wife's birthday. And have a great time this week back at track practice with the guys, and best of luck getting prepped for Disney.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. That's DC United Captain Steven Birnbaum, and that's a show for us this week, guys. Thanks so much for listening to us here on Tried and True, the DC United Postgame Podcast presented by Heineken.
The bad news is that everyone is a potential victim, but the good news is that everyone is a potential solution. Sensitize the masses to sanitize, keep a social distance and quarantine. Stop!
The coronavirus is sweeping over mankind.
Everybody must be alert. It's a global pandemic we can never take for granted. Kila mtu must be alert. It's a matter of life we can never take for granted. Discipline and personal hygiene, and make sure you regularly wash your hands. Keep a distance from everyone. Report anything like a symptom. Serious fever is a symptom. Dry cough is a symptom. Walkway tremor is a symptom. Itchy eyes and flu is a symptom.